You did bring up something about character, and this is another thing, as I was mentioning, I'm obsessed with, particularly because we work in an industry with a lot of quote-unquote flawed characters. And even in trailers now for films, I see people talking about the actors when they talk about their characters. They're like, oh, well, I like her because she's such a flawed character. But for me, flaw becomes a catch-all for everything. Like, there are flaws, like she's quick to anger, or she's, an insecure person. And then there's not flaws, but she's a mass murderer.
Right.
And I find that for many people, the darker a character,
just automatically say it's flawed.
It's a flawed
right.
character. And I'm thinking there's a difference, and or at least that's my sense. And I'm curious if it's yours.
Yeah.
I guess my question is: are there things that characters can do that can make them irredeemable, or is it just a character flaw? Is it just humanity coming out?
I guess the question of whether or not a character is redeemable at all is sort of interesting, because for me, you're taking your reader or your audience, you're putting them on a roller coaster track, right? So they can't veer off as they go. They have to they're going to experience something linearly, they're going to experience it in real time, or they're going to read it and think about it later. So you're only giving them that track. So you can't when the movie's over, the book is over, whatever, that you don't get to find out well, that guy killed somebody, but in 6 months he finds the Lord and changes his life and he becomes redeemable. So it's the question itself is almost like I'm trying to wrap my head around it. I do think that you can come up with characters that are horrific people I think you have to come up with characters who are horrific, but you see something in them that you can relate to. If you don't have that, then it becomes just sort of cartoons. It's just, commedia dell'arte.
Right.
It's just flat characters that don't mean anything. So, and I love characters who've done something horrific. Actually, my favorite gag is to make you love a character and then you find out, oh, well, 10 years ago they did blank, and you're just like, oh boy, I like that guy. Now I just found,
Right.
So now you're invested in that character. So are they redeemable or not? Did they make up for their life? Unforgiven is one of those movies where you watch this character who you love Clint Eastwood from the second you see him, and then he's like, I did bad things, I never want to go back. And then when he goes back and you see how bad he is, you're like, holy crap! It's the hammer of God. It's fantastic. I love a character like that. So yes, I do think that there are characters that can be so reprehensible in a book that that they would not be redeemable in real life.
To interject for a minute, one of the things I'm fascinated by on soap operas, for example, is how criminals, murderers, multiple murderers, if they're played by an attractive enough actor or popular enough actor, they can be redeemed.
Right.
Or even, I would say, in comics. What's interesting to me, and this is perhaps a tangent for a later time, though, is sexual crime is a whole different thing. Or I was amazed. I had some people reading a script of mine, and a girl cheated on her boyfriend with another guy, his best friend. And this was a crime against humanity. Obviously, because it meant something to them. They really felt that.
Right.
It was the only thing she'd ever done. She was a really good person, but she just fell in love with two people at the same time. But I was amazed at how I gave this script to multiple men, and they hated her. And yet, other characters in the same script were murderous, villainous, etc. They were being cheered.
Right.
And so it's for a long time I've wondered what makes a character irredeemable, what doesn't, why do we forgive characters for certain things, what fantasies are played out in our heads. As I say, obviously those guys that touched something in them deeply. If they hated this teenager for making a bad decision, that had nothing to do, that wasn't going to change the world, and it certainly was, she just broke someone's heart.
Right. It's interesting being aware that the audience always brings something to the book or the project or the film, it is important. You obviously have no control over that. I can try to, that's like bumper bowling, right? Then I can put up sort of the bumpers of where I would like them to go. But at that point, I don't know whether or not they're going to find that person lovable or not after the fact, or if they're going to have a visceral reaction. But I dig those reactions though, and I think that's part of our job, is like that kind of intentional manipulation. The trick is to find people who are willing to let you do that manipulation. And you know, like I've been working on an adaptation of a project with somebody, and it's been very interesting to see what their lines were for. I had a character as a young girl. She was very disturbed, and she cut herself as part of the story. And they're like, I don't know, cutting. It's like it's such a hot button issue, and I think they were ultimately. It wasn't strictly a commercial decision. It was I don't know if I'm comfortable with that, and I don't know if I can get behind her after I see that. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there going, this is real. This is what, unfortunately, like kids do. And she does come out of it. Like, we get to see where she goes. It was a way to externalize, you know, how deep her trouble was. So it was interesting to see sort of where people, you know, what they bring to the table. And then you just have to make a decision like, okay, am I going to stick with that, or am I going to find a softer way to do the same thing? Which, you know, there's a million ways to skin a cat.